Hello chess friends. For today's video, I chose the game from the round 2 of the FIDE Candidates tournament. And in this game, with the white pieces, we have a Russian player, Nepo, and with the black pieces, another Russian player, Alexander Grischuk. So the game starts with the moves e4, e5, knight to f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. So this is the Ruy Lopez. And Alexander played knight to f6. We have a castle, and then knight takes e4. White play move d4. It attacks the center pawn here. So the main line says that black has to move the knight out of the center. So he moves the knight on d6. Bishop takes c6, and then d takes c6. D takes e5. Another move with the knight, so knight to f5. As you can see, this line. Black play a lot of times with his knight, so he played 4 moves with that knight. It's not so typical for many openings, but this is the main line. Here Jan played the move queen takes d8, and then king takes back d8, knight to c3, king to e8, and after that we have h3 with the idea to go g4 and kick out the knight from the square f5. Black has to go with the move h5, and after that bishop to f4. Idea of that move is of course to develop the bishop and then bring the rooks out like rook to d1 or rook to e1. Bishop to e7 was played and rook a d1. The d file is the only open file on the board, so it's always put the rooks there. Bishop to e6 and then knight to g5. Idea of the move knight to g5 is to attack the bishop on the square e6, and for example if black plays something like bishop to c4, then knight can take e6, f takes e6, and then this pawn on e6 can be a good target for white, so he'll find a way how to attack it. One of the options to do that could be to go like knight to e4, which attacks the bishop, and the next idea can be to go like knight to g5 and attack the pawn on e6. After knight to g5, rook h6 was played. So after knight takes e6, rook is going to take it back. So we have rook f to e1, and then bishop to b4. So now knight is pinned, and black wants to take that knight and make a double pawn on c file. We have a3 for white. After that, bishop takes c3, bishop b takes c3, and then move h5. So he wants to block any kind of the attack and keep the structure like this on g2 and h3. So king h2 was played, and after that we have king to f8. Rook to b1 attacks the pawn on b7, so it provokes the reaction from the pawns. Pawn moves to the b6. After that, rook to b4 move, and then we have a rook to e8. Black is looking for that to make some attack on the pawn on e5. So a rook a4 attacks a7, so a5 looks very natural. And then bishop to d2. We have c5, and black create a very strong pawn structure with his pawns on the queen side. They're untouchable, so they're all on the black squares, which means that in the future white's dark colored bishop could be able to attack them, but for now it doesn't work because he cannot attack the last pawn in this change, which is the pawn on c7. After that, white moves the rook on f4. We have rook to h5, he attacks the knight, so now rook f3 opens the protection from the bishop, and then king to g8. King is in some kind of the castle right now, but it's not very important for black to keep the king like this. So bishop to c1, and then we have a knight to e7. So black starts some maneuvering with this knight. So he can go like knight to c6, which will make more pressure on the pawn on e5. Here white played the move g4, so it attacks the rook, but black is able to capture the pawn. H takes g3, f takes g3, and then knight to c6. Black is looking for that to make more pressure on the pawn on the square e5. So bishop to f4 is played. So he's protecting the pawn on the square e5, and then bishop moves back to the c8. As you can see, we have opposite color bishops on the board. So if somehow they trade off the knights and trade off the rooks from the board, so that will be, most probably that will be draw. So rook from f to e3 happened, and then a knight to d8. So still black is maneuvering with his knight. He want to go with the knight on the square e6, and after king to g2 that happens, he moves the knight on e6. knight takes e6, bishop takes e6, and then white pushed the pawn on g4. So this rook is not very comfortable on the square h5, so he has to move somewhere, but he doesn't have a lot of squares to go. He can choose between 3 squares. He can go like h4, h7, or even h8 squares. But some of them are not very good. Like if he wants to go like h4, it will give some tempo moves for white, so he can be able to move the king up to g3, and then rook has to move back. So immediately he moves the rook back to the h8, and he will find another plan how to activate this rook. For example, he could go like this: king to h7, and after that bring the rooks on d file. Here white play bishop to g5 with idea to control the square d8, and black is not able to use d file, so king h7 happen. After that king to g3, we have a rook to b8, and then rook d3. White wants to control the only open file on the board, which is a d file, and rook e8 happen, rook e d1, and after that we have b file. So black recognized that he cannot do anything on d file. He has to try to find some chances on the queen side, and that's the reason why he started to push the pawns like b5. So we have a rook to d8. White wants to trade off the rooks, and after that b4. We have rook takes e8, rook has to recapture, rook takes e8, and then c takes, of course he will first take with the double pawn. So c takes b4, c takes b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, and then white decided to accept the draw here, so he trade off the rooks with the move rook to d8, rook takes d8, and this position they agree for a draw, because on the board we'll have only opposite color bishop after that, and 4 pawns for both of them. Let's try to find a good continuation. For example, if bishop takes d8, he attacks the pawn on the c7, it will provoke his reaction. So if pawn moves like this, white will probably try to attack the pawn which is on dark square. The pawn on b4 is not protected, so if you play with the bishop from one of the sides, like bishop a5 or bishop e7, it will attack the pawn. But of course black will not keep it like this, so he'll push the pawn down to the b3, offer it for exchange, and basically this endgame position with opposite color bishops mostly finish with the draw. So in the move after rook to d8 and rook takes d8, they agree for a draw, so the game is finished here. That was the Ruy Lopez, and with opposite color bishops, and the game finished with the draw. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed in this analysis, and see you in the next game analysis. Bye bye.